and gracias for joining me today. Today I'm going to be showing you how to stamp on the ceramic tiles. My theme is Dia de los Muertos, so that's what I'm going to be using. I'm showing you some of the items that you will be needing to make your little tiles here, making sure you have your gloves, paper towels. I'm going to be actually using two separate permanent inks because I really want to see how they're going to come out. Since I've always used another permanent ink. Distrox Oxides, my Distress Spray Bottle with my little mister. I'm also going to be using those two separately to see how they come out. Since I mentioned my theme is Dia de los Muertos, I took out some of the stamps that I really love to use, and let's come and make some coasters. One thing I did forget to mention is tiles. Don't forget your tiles. You need tiles. I got these and I'll list them at the description below. I'm really excited to be doing a side-by-side comparison using the Distress Oxide inks with the Mr. spray bottle and the Distress spray bottle. The inks I'm going to be using will be listed in the description, also below. The first one I'm using is Wilted Violet. The second one I'm using is Twisted Citron. And then the third and last one that I'm going to be using is Spiced Marmalade. I really like these Distress Oxide inks because they're very easy to apply, and when you do touch them they are chalky. This is one of the reasons why I'm using gloves, because they can stain your fingers or your clothing. If you do get a little bit of ink on the pad, you can just use a paper towel to wipe it off. The Mist spray bottle is the one that I'm using on the right, and then the Distress spray bottle is the one that I'm using on the left. The only difference that I really see here is the amount of water that is being sprayed out versus the mister being a light mist, of course, and the spray bottle being a little bit heavier droplet. You can add as much water as you want during the heating of the moving of the ink or the manual movement of the ink. I've just learned from my previous experience that you want to do as slowly as possible the amount of water that you're using on the tiles, because you don't want to overwater it and then you're finding out that a lot of your oxide ink has been kind of wasted away by being minimized with the water usage. Now what you're seeing here is my heating tool that I use to emboss other craft projects. I'm using it to speed up the process a little bit of drying and also moving around the Distress Oxide inks on the tiles. One of the things that I did notice, and you have to be very careful, is to make sure that you get the water inside the little cracks, the little holes that are left in the tiles. And other than that, it just helps it dry a little faster. Now, after using both the mister and the spray, I did notice a little bit of difference just by the amount of water that came out, but the end result was basically the same. Now, this is a towel that I had done earlier in the day. After using my heating tool to dry it a little bit, I do also like to use a little paper towel, because regardless of how long you've allowed it to dry, the oxide inks still leave a little chalky residue. So I like to get a little paper towel to make sure that I've collected any leftover chalky residue or any kind of hairs or any kind of water still left behind for that. The stamp that I decided to use on this tile is one of the sugar skulls that is one of my favorites. I love it because of the pretty flowers on there, and I'll list it in the description below where I purchased it as well. I'm going to be comparing the Ranger Archival ink and the Versafine Permanent Ink to see which one I actually do like as far as how it sets on the tile. The one that I'm using right now currently would be the Ranger Archival ink, and I do notice that it doesn't go on as heavy as other inks that I've used in the past. So I want to make sure that I ink every single part of the stamp, which is kind of hard for me since my vision is kind of not that great. So I'm kind of glad that I can see it this way. So once you got an ink on there, you want to make sure that the ends of the stamp do not have some residue of the ink, because the last thing you want is to stamp on your tile and find out that you have an outline of what you don't want on it. Now, you want to make sure that you have everything settled where you want it, because once you put it on there, you don't want to move it, have it slide off, or jiggle out of the way, because it will slide off. The inks are very slippery. So once you have a handle on that, you want to press down with even pressure. Sorry, my bracelet there was giving me a hard time. And press down, making sure that you have even distribution of the pressure when you're using your fingers. This one I noticed didn't move around a lot. Even though I was pressing down, I noticed that when I've used another ink, it would slide and I would have to wipe it down and start all over again. But this one here came out real pretty. Wow. It's very light, and I really like that, because even though you can see a little bit didn't come out from the ink, it still gives it like a little faded look, and I really like the way that one did come out. The next one that we're going to be doing is the Versafine Permanent Ink, and again, you want to make sure that there's no residue on your tile, especially any leftover water, making sure that you wipe off your stamp. I normally use my pad to do that, but couldn't find it, I guess. So here I'm going to be using the Versafine Permanent Ink, and I'm going to put a generous amount on here. Wow, that is a lot of ink. I don't know if it's more than just saying it's a lot of ink, or it's very dark ink color. And it is. It shines when you do put it on there. And it does look like I'm being very generous with it, but I'm not. So once I noticed that it looked like it had adhered to every single cranny of the stamp, which is really good, especially if you're making other crafts like cards. It's really good because it brings out all the very fine details in your stamp. So when you are stamping cards, it just pops out rather than trying to miss a line here and there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the tile, making sure that it's sectioned off right. Now, when I laid it on the tile, I noticed there was some slight movement on there. And it looks like it's moving, that I'm moving it, but it's the camera actually moving just a tad bit. And so as you evenly distribute the weight on this one, I'm kind of really excited to see what this is going to come out with. Because of the Versafine Permanent Ink, it is for a detail of your stamps and what you're using it for. I'm kind of eagerly was looking forward to seeing what it would look like. And here you see the difference of the two separate permanent inks on here. The Versafine ink was very detailed, and the Ranger ink had a little lighter on there. I actually love both of them, but as you can see here from the different inks how they dried, one does pop out a little bit more, but I'm gonna have to allow this to dry kind of an overnight and see what it does, because there's still ink from the Versa and not very much from the archival ink that Ranger makes. Both of them are stunning. I just love it. It's just a matter of the dry time and how much time you want to wait to finish your product. Now I did want to share some of the ones that I had done earlier in the video with the inks that I had used off camera and how they dried. As you can see, this one has like a little fuzz on it on the side right there. You just got to be careful when you're spraying them outside, making sure debris isn't falling around on them to lay on them, so cover them. And then just add your Phelps on the bottom and you have coasters, voila. And here is the finished product. It took about 3 days for the one here to dry, and then the one on the far right, it only took like 24 hours. Once I sprayed, it was dry, and here you go, all done.